Hi, and welcome back to Friends and Company. Well, we just came from the woods near Camden, Tennessee, of the crash site of Patsy Cline and the others on that plane. And we found a fellow who knows all about that. In fact, he was one of the first people that were there. And you know, you hear a lot of stories about what exactly happened the night and the days after the plane crash over there. And we have found a guy who's going to tell us straight up what the story is. And with us to talk about that is Jerry Phifer from Phifer's Country Store in Eva, Tennessee, right, Jerry?
That's true.
Well, first of all, Jerry, you've got a wonderful place here. In fact, we'd like to come back someday and do a whole show here.
Well, you're welcome to.
This is wonderful. You've got all kinds of collectibles and antiques and signs and pictures and all kinds of memorabilia.
Well, like I tell everybody else, I collect everything but money.
Me too. Go back to that day of the plane crash. Now, it was at night, and tell us how old you were and what was going on with you then.
Well, it was either actually March 4th, 1963. I was a police dispatcher for the city of Camden. That was my first job I ever held. I was approximately 18 years old, fresh out of high school. I worked in the evening shift at the Camden Police Department. I received a call about 7:30 p.m. that night that a plane had crashed near a farmer's home in rural Benton County. I immediately called the Tennessee Highway Patrol and asked them to have a plane missing. They advised me they did not, but they would do some checking. Furthermore, I went ahead and called the rescue squad out and also the auxiliary police department. And they got out that night and started running the road, which was called the Mount Carmel Road. It was out from the city dump, kind of west of Camden, Tennessee, about 3 miles.
Now, did somebody hear the plane going down, or did they see it?
Well, the farmer related to me that gave me the call that he heard a crash. He heard a motor. It sounded like it was sputtering, and finally it quit, and then the next thing he heard was a crash, seemed like. Well, of course, it was dark, and that particular night it was rainy and kind of foggy and misty, and the wind blowing and lightning, and it wasn't a very good night to be flying, I don't think. So we kept the rescue squad out to about midnight, and they called it a night because we thought it'd probably be better the morning to look. And at that time, the Tennessee Highway Patrol was going to furnish a helicopter where we could look through the woods and see better from the air, you know.
Yeah.
So, some way or another, the Highway Patrol checked with the FAA in Nashville, and they did call me back approximately an hour later and related to me that there was a plane missing. And they related to me on that plane was Patsy Cline, Cowboy Copas, Hawkshaw Hawkins, and Randy Hughes, a pilot. Well, that made things more tense and got some more excitement started among the men involved in the search and everything. And some way or another hit the wire services, and I started receiving calls from all over the country, you know, newspapers and radio stations and things of that nature. And all I could tell them was just what I knew at that time, you know. And so at that time, Camden had a city hall in the basement of Hall Hardware store. And like you say, in 1963, our police department was very small. The city hall closed at 2 a.m. in the morning. So I stayed probably 2 or 2:30 and closed City Hall and got in the car with the Tennessee Highway Patrolman Troy Odell. He was the officer on duty at that time. And I thought we'd ride around with him the rest of the night and, you know, be on the scene that morning if something did turn up. Well, we did ride that night till about daylight, and the farmer that originally heard the crash went looking back down behind his home and found the crash. So about 6 or 6:15 that morning, he called the sheriff's department here in Benton County. In turn, the sheriff's department called the highway patrol, and in turn, the highway patrol called the car that we was in and directed us to the scene. Told us to meet Mr. So-and-so, whoever the man's name was. I can't recall at the present time what his name was, either Baker or Hollingsworth, I believe. So we met him, and at that time, we went further down the road, approximately 1 mile, at the top of a hill and parked, and there was a funny feeling came over me at that time. Like I say, I was barely 18 years old, and I thought, well, I said, it's going to be kind of an unusual experience, me being, you know, where I'm positioned I'm in. I've never seen anybody, you know, that's been killed in a bad wreck or anything like that.
And at this point, you knew there was probably no hope for anybody
survival.
to survive.
That's true. I just, you know, It felt like there'd be probably death there, you know.
Yeah.
So I never will forget walking down that hill that morning. Like I say, a little mist there, foggy. And I had a funny feeling. My hair seemed like stand straight up on my head. And I kept walking down that hill, and we seen where the plane clipped the top of a tree off. It would come straight in. And the motor went directly in the ground. It made a big hole in the ground. And where it hit in a little valley-like, kind of a little ravine, I guess you'd call it, down through the woods there. And where it hit, it strewn material all the way down that valley. I'm talking about pieces of the airplane, part of the entertainment's clothing, and part of their equipment, guitars, amplifiers, and things of that nature. I remember seeing broken guitars. I remember seeing cowboy hats and part of their rhinestone suits and things of that nature. And I kept walking down that ravine there, and I kept, looking for bodies, see if I could find any bodies. And I couldn't see none, and that puzzled me. It really did, because I didn't know where the bodies was at. Well, I got about halfway down through where it was. It went, I'd say, probably 300 feet, 400 feet probably through it. And there was oil and grease and blood and flesh-like and parts of the plane embedded in the trees on the side that the plane was going through. It just threw it right down through there, in twisted wreckage. So I got in about halfway, and I got looking around for bodies, and I couldn't find none. So I happened to look down, and I was standing on a piece of flesh. And that made me feel very, very awful. It really upset me very much. And I got looking around, and that all it was flesh, just pieces. And that gave me a funny feeling. I wasn't expecting anything like that. I was expecting whole bodies, which, normally would be in something, or an accident of that nature. But still, I didn't know that much about airplane crash at that time either. But we started searching the area, me and Troy Odell, the Tennessee Highway Patrolman, that was with me, and the guy that found the accident, the one farm that was on. So we looked the area over, and we found pieces of flesh, and we found more Patsy Cline, I'd say, than anyone else. She was wedged in under a log, partly, at the very far end of where all this material was through at. Her torso was always intact, and part of her head and her long black hair was identifiable, reason we knew it was her. Also, we found one of her feet wedged in a fork of a tree, just like this. It was broke off at the ankle, and a foot just hanging in the fork of a tree. And the reason we knew it was her foot, it had fingernail polish on the toenails, and that's the reason we knew it was her foot. So we kept on looking around, and like I say, there's no life there on the scene. It was a very dreadful scene, and it's something I'd never experienced before and hope never see again. And we called reinforcements in to help. Of course, the ambulance crews arrived, and people started coming, and also people started taking pieces of plane off immediately. It's just amazing how things happen that nature. There's 2 or 3 men dug the engine out of the ground and carried it off. And pieces of airplane wings and things like that, which I have some pieces myself that I'd collected long when I was down there, which I have some guitar strings that I picked up, and also pieces of strut on the airplane, and I have probably Hawkshaw Hawkins's cuff link. I figure that's his, and a piece of wire, and also here's a steering column that came out of the airplane. And also I have the FAA report that they gave the Camden Police Department at that time. They give a report to all the agencies in each county whenever something like that happened. So I talked to Chief Aubrey Pafford. He was Chief of Police at that time, and when they gave it to him, I asked him, I said, what are you going to do with that? He told me, he said, well, I'm just going to file it back some more. He said, well, I like to have it. I told him, I said, someday it may be worth something. Collector, he said, well, you'd be more glad I can give it to you. You can have it. So I took it, and I've had all this stuff put at my mother's house, put up in a drawer all these years, till I opened this store 6 years ago. Then I displayed it where people could see it, and also we can talk about the reminder of what happened on that day. So that's about really the extent of what I know about the plane crash, but I do know that me and Troy Odell and the gentleman that the land belonged to at that time, either Hollingsworth or Baker, one of the names, were the first ones on the scene that morning on March 5th, 1963.
Okay, well, you sure give a really complete description of everything that happened. I wasn't really sure that we were going to hear that kind of descriptive.
Well,
but that's good to know, because you hear a lot of stories, and you know, you were telling me earlier that you've heard a lot of stories of things that you know just absolutely didn't happen because you were there.
That's true. It's something that I never want to see again, and I understand since then there have been a lot of plane crashes, and I know how people are mangled, their bodies are, and at that time I was naive. See, I'd never seen any death before, and I was very naive about that, and it upset me very much.
Yeah.
And it took me several weeks to really get that off my mind, and I still think about it very much.
It might have helped you. Now, you went on into law enforcement. You was actually the sheriff here in Benton County for a while.
That's true.
I'm sure that seeing that at probably such a young age probably gave you more of an appreciation for life and how fragile our bodies really are, and wrecks and things of that nature. So you probably learned something from it, although it was a grisly scene.
But this was a horrible thing to happen, but hopefully they'll get the monument up for them, and they'll finally be recognized for their abilities, what they did for the country. They was great musicians and singers, all of them were. And I think it's good that they're getting a monument put up at the place and doing what they're doing the 4th of July. I think it's really a good thing. I'm proud to see it.
Yeah, I am too. Well, thanks for being on with us this week and explaining about it, telling us the real story.
Yeah,
and we want to come back here sometime and just get your whole store. This is the neatest place. It's just like a museum in here.
You're welcome anytime.
All righty. Now, I was holding this piece. You think this was probably a piece of the strut?
Yes, it is, and if you look real close, there's still some skin right there on it, dried skin.
Oh, is that what that is?
That's what that is. That's dried skin.
Okay.
A little gruesome, I know, but of course you're talking about 30-something years ago, so I mean it's dried, but that's true. That's part of the strut, I'd say, of the airplane.
And the airplane was probably what, green,
well,
yellow?
I'd say green, yellow. It's Piper Comanche 4-seater. And I'd
So
say
it's just a
probably
real
green
small
there.
plane.
And this here, like I say, the steering column come out of it. It says Piper Comanche on it right there. We just broke all the pieces and everything.
Oh, yeah.
But it's something to have. It's something to, you know, to pass on through generations. That, you know, something that you can say that, you know, you was there. Everybody can't say that.
That's right. Well, thank you again for being with us.
You're very much welcome.
And stay tuned. We'll have more Friends and Company right after this.